Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Art of the Beholder, a show dedicated to all things eclectic in the world of art. I'm your host, Novo, and today we're going to be talking about art in television and horror, focusing on Mike Flanagan's The Fall of the House of Usher. To hash things out, guys, you're in for a treat because we have a new guest for you. Making her debut on the show is someone that is going to help us set things straight. So have no fear, boys and girls, because Krystal Clear is here. That's Krystal with a K. So everyone, please give a warm welcome to KC. KC, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
I am so goddamn excited because it's spooky season. And this is, we already did a show on Mike Flanagan, like a little career episode. And now this is the coda to top off the year. We get to talk about the Fall of the House of Usher, because Fall of the House of Usher is another Mike Flanagan adaptation done right, continuing to help him maintain his throne as one of the greatest in this medium and of this genre. And another testament to why we call him a modern master of horror. So guys, I'm going to give you the recipe. Okay. So what do you get when you mix the gothic works of Edgar Allen Poe with the contemporary creative minds of modern horror filmmaking, then add in a dash of social commentary and a little of HBO Succession, and you have The Fall of the House of Usher. Now, before we can discuss, of course, we all need a little background. The show was released on October 12th, 2023. It consists of 8 episodes and is often billed as a gothic horror drama limited series. Of course, based on the works of Edgar Allan Poe, as already stated, it was created by Mike Flanagan and directed by both Mike Flanagan and Michael Feminari. It stars Carla Gugino, Bruce Greenwood, Mary McDonald, Henry Thomas, Kate Siegel, Rahul Kali, Samantha Sloyan, Tania Miller, Michael Trucco, Katie Parker, Sarian Sapkata, Michael Bedell, Krystal Balint, Ruth Codd, Kylie Curran, Carl Cumbly, and of course, Mark Hamill. With music by the Newton Brothers. I cannot wait to discuss and get our teeth into this. But before we do, guys, we're going to take a little break. Hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back. This episode is brought to you by novella Adulteration. Follow adult entertainer Jessica Amberstar as she embarks on a journey that will change her life forever. She not only finds herself in the industry, but figures out a way to transform herself and eventually become reborn. Find out how in Adulteration in both paperback and ebook, as well as now audiobook. Available now. Now back to the show. All right, we are back to do the damn thing. I want to start here. Let's bring back our guest, Miss KC, in the house representing KC. And I got to ask you this. What was your first impression of the show?
Goodness. Okay. So first impression of the show. It was, definitely had it's a mind twist, right? So I feel like there's so many elements where surface layer, nice little horror, nice little bumps, nice little like sudden scares here and there. Definitely see some of the grueliness, a little bit of gore. But when you get past that first layer, it like invites you in to go a little bit deeper. And that's what I enjoyed about my first impression. Cause horror movies sometimes today I feel like are just like surface gore and blood and cool. Great.
Definitely elevated horror.
Yeah.
Like
and this
Jordan
one I
Peele
just feel like
horror.
it invites you into like, okay, let me think about this a little bit more. Like they're actually saying some actual like things that get you thinking past like just gore and guts and stuff. So my first impression, loved it. I knew absolutely when I finished it, I wanted to repeat it and watch it again to see
You
any
told
like
me 3
other
times you watched this bad boy 3 GD times to prepare for this show. Where do you have the time?
I didn't have the time. It was definitely a lot of a lot of nights of binging.
Oh,
I
man.
luckily
Well,
I had
thank
been
you.
sick this past week, so I had a full day of
She was
of
cursed
watching
by
it.
the Usher family, guys.
I was,
He talked to
and
Verna.
I love Verna. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get to her. I love her.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna tell you right now, and I'm gonna tell the audience, we're saving the best for the last. I wanna talk about Verna at the very, very end, so put a pin in that because I wanna build up to who she is, what she is, her character, all of the things. Before we get there, I do wanna talk a little more first impressions because, now are you a fan ahead? Like, have you seen his other stuff, like Hill House, Bly Manor, Midnight Mass?
Okay, so I have, and honestly, like when I watch a lot of horror movies, I don't even think about the directors or the people behind it. And so, until I started
Well, welcome to
chatting with
Art of the
you
Beholder.
about them, yeah, until I started chatting with you, I didn't even realize like a lot of the shows I've been watching were directed by Mike Flanagan, and so I didn't realize I'm an undercover fan.
You're a closet
I
flanhead.
am, and I had no clue. But yeah, I feel like the last several movies. So like I was in love with horror movies back in the day,
Yeah.
like the old Stephen King's, and then I fell out of love with it. And I would have to say that Mike Flanagan's season series that he's pushed out in Netflix has definitely helped
Like,
me fall back
filled that
in love with it.
void kinda thing?
Yeah, I just fell back in love with horror. I'm like, it brought me back home. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And this one, in particular, I think is really cool because I do have another love. When I was a kid, it just kind of reunited me with my love for Edgar Allan Poe, and
Mm.
just being able to see a little bit and like catch on to some of the poetry that's being spoken in the episodes. I just it just brought me back to like, oh, I remember when I was a kid and I used to like love reading The Raven, love reading Anne Lee.
Well, how does it stack up then in your eyes? How does it stack up to the other Flanagan works and titles?
That's a hard one.
I gotta put everyone on the spot at least once in the show. There probably will be more, but, don't overthink it. What's the first thing that pops into your head?
Okay, so the first one, I have to say my probably my first love of Mike Flanagan. For me, my full exposure will probably be The House of Haunted Hill. So that one's probably going to be my number one.
That is my close I'm glad you said that because that is I struggled with this piece. When we were gonna do a piece on the fall of the House of Usher, I of course, we're gonna compare this to his other works, and The Haunting of Hill House holds a very special place in my heart, and the more I tried to compare, this one to that one, I kind of felt like they were apples and oranges. They're very similar, but very, very different. So my first impression, especially compared to the other stuff, was this one kind of had grit, right? This one was graphic and it was just like a really hard R outing by Mike Flanagan. When I think of his other stuff, it's a little more PG-13. It's definitely still scary, and has the frights and all that stuff, but it wasn't like this, with this one he let those those f bombs fly. We had nudity and some pretty
Yeah.
gruesome scenes of death and destruction that we haven't really seen in his previous works. And so, what I'm trying to say is, I loved it. Needless to say, I loved it. This is my bread and butter, and I thought, honestly, it was a little scarier than some of I think his previous works, and that's because I felt like he relied a little. Not in a bad way, but there was a little more reliance on jump scares and this one was a little more terror filled, where I think the previous stuff was a little more dreadful and you got under your skin, where this one was straight up just right in front of your face.
And I think that's where I probably differ, and that's why I kinda go between the 2, where I think The Haunting of Hill House was my fave, while this will come into a nice second, because I like, Haunting of Hill House, I was afraid to go to sleep at night. I was afraid that I will go to sleep and I'll wake up and I'll see, like, the tall man or, like, see somebody, like, flying in my
The
face, like,
bent
it
neck lady, like
yeah, like,
staring
it
over
truly
your
just
bed.
messed yeah, exactly that. I just had
Ugh,
that experience.
ugh.
It just mentally messed with me, while this one, I felt like, yes, it had a lot of jump scares, a lot of gore. I think it was a little bit more darker than A Haunted on Hill, but I can sleep at night.
The
Like, I went to
Haunting
bed
of
and I was
Hill.
fine.
I
Like,
love
I
that.
was able to binge, like, 8 episodes and be like, "Cool, great, go to bed."
La da di da. I'm just gonna go to bed now.
While The Haunting, I'm like, "Oh, I can't watch that at night. That's a daytime show."
Yeah, no, you make a good point because and you'll be a perfect guest for the show because, yeah, I feel like Fall of the House of Usher is probably my number one now, where Hill House is probably my close second. So I'm just like a complete 180 of where you're at. And so let's get into it. I think that's a good segue to talk about this guy. And I have to admit, I have to admit that I thought, based on the title, we were just gonna be focusing on this Poe story. But this beautiful reimagining adaptation is really a celebration of Poe, where we see a lot of Poe's short stories interwoven into this completely new original story that Mike Flanagan helped bring to life. And we see that even in the titles of the episode. So this is 1 to 8, guys. A Midnight Dreary, The Mask of the Red Death, Murder in the Rue Morgue, The Black Cat, The Telltale Heart, Goldbug, The Pit and the Pendulum, and of course, The Raven. Guys, we're going to really start getting into spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show yet, go ahead and pause this guy, come back to us down the road, because we're going to start really getting into the nit and gritty of the spoilers of the show itself. So let's talk all things story, narrative, and themes. Have you ever, or did you reread the actual short story, The Fall of the House of Usher?
Yes. So I actually didn't realize that was one of his short stories. So I've never actually read that one. So I got to read that for the first time, and I read it after, which I wish I read it before, but it kind of just made all the like dots connect a little bit once I read that one. So I did read The Fall of the House of Usher.
Yeah, and I thought it's such a simple story. I thought, like, how are they gonna make effing how are they gonna make this one story a long limited miniseries? And then obviously when I rewatched it, or when I watched the series, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a celebration of Poe's stories
Yeah.
with this very, very modern spin on a family like the Ushers. And that's where I loved, we love social commentary and the deep cuts and deep meanings in shows like this. And I love the fact that they used a pharmaceutical company to talk about a lot of things that are plaguing our modern times, our society, and the use of so of course the use of a pharmaceutical company and the comparisons to the Sackler family. So guys, if you don't know who the Sackler family is, it's the family that used to own, or they may still own. I know they're going through legal litigation right now. They owned Purdue Pharma, and if you don't know who Purdue Pharma is, that is the pharmaceutical company that pretty much, let's just call a spade, pretty much helped get the world addicted to Oxycontin. So when they're talking about things like Ligadone in the story, they're talking about Oxycontin. And when they're talking about things like Fortunato, they're talking about Purdue Pharma. And I thought, what a perfect vessel to tell this story.
I thought it was very clever how they wove that in, especially because some of those names are definitely tied out of Edgar Allan Poe. So Fortunata being a particular name that he's used in his short story. So I thought it was kind of cool how he married Poe and brought it into the social current events that's happening in the world, and it not just touched on that the opium crisis. It's also touching on a lot of other topics, critical topics, touchy topics that we're currently living through right now in society. So I thought it was really nice play on how he kind of merged the two.
The show was also, in my humble opinion, such a masterclass in adaptation writing, because if you think about how it was actually built, because they had to, one, incorporate a lot of different Poe stories that, again, they stand alone. These are their own short stories in the catalog, the bibliography of Poe's work. Whereas obviously in this story, they had to be interwoven into this overall overarching A plot, which was, of course, involving Roderick and his twin sister Madeline, and then bringing in all of these other characters who happen to be his family, often his kids or kids from from his traditional marriage, and of course children that he acquired outside of marriage. And if you didn't notice, or if you didn't know, all of those names serve a purpose too in the works of Poe's body of his short stories and things like that. So those character names are not accidental. They are included in so many other works of Edgar Allan Poe. And that brings us to what I call the Flanagan trademarks, because we see he has such an identity and he has such a signature on how he likes to make his stuff. And just like his other works, this again deals with multi-generational familial struggles, trials and tribulations of identity and place, and of course all the horrors within.
That was right. I didn't even kind of catch on to how the different names of the characters actually tied into, Poe's work, and so as I was starting to connect the dots when I started to reread some of his, short stories, it kinda wanted me to go deeper and deeper into reading all of Poe's collections, into, what he's written, and so that was really exciting just to see how, Mike Flanagan, kind of brought that character to life. Even Aggie, his role in the series, even though he wasn't really tied into each of those short stories, but his name, his character has his short story of its own outside, and that I want to like dive into and be like, okay, I want to like learn a little bit more about this character in Poe's world versus how Mike depicted him in this series. So yeah, that was it intrigued me completely, and I just want to dive deeper into Poe's work. And like I said, it reconnected that love for Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, Aggie was, there was, how should I put this? He, with the reimagining, with the Netflix special, there, when it comes to the characters, there was really no one that was likable, right? Like you kind of, and they were written that way. They were all kind of despicable, and so when we got to the end of the episode, because every episode we would kill off a family member, and there was a payoff there, because I couldn't, I really had to do some soul searching. I was like all these characters are not likable at all, and they're kind of written to be that way, except for just a couple. I would say obviously Aggie is one of them, and then I would. This was weird because we saw young Roderick. When he was like in his 20s or something, he was very likable. He was very nice. Fish out of water. I'm just trying to do the right thing by my family, and he was like getting slowly and slowly more evil until he kills obviously the CEO of the company to overtake it. And then we see the final, the straw that broke the camel's back, and then he was changed forever. And that's when we started seeing the older version, the man that Roderick Usher became.
I agree that he started off pretty innocent, right? And especially with him and his young wife Annabelle Lee, and it kind of made me go back to the poem of how they had young innocence, wanting to do the right thing. And I think people who maybe go into pharmaceuticals or any kind of healthcare or anything really where they have a passion of trying to help people, and then sometimes the world, society kind of puts them on a different path. And so I feel like Roderick, he really wanted to help. And what they kept saying, and I noticed that Aggie said it and Roderick said it, and I feel like someone else said it. The world needs changing, and so
Mm,
they kept playing that out throughout most of the series, the episodes. The world needs changing. I think he really wanted to change the world in a positive way. I think he just maybe got straight down the path. I
mhm.
question if he was the one that was really. You said that he killed the original CEO, which I really question if he did. I actually think it was more Madeline than him, and Shimari maybe was more of the evil twin that kind of brought him down the
Oh, I
path.
like that, the evil twin.
Yeah, because I feel like she was more of the ruthless one, and I felt
She
like
was
technically she
ruthless.
was the one
Ugh.
that gave him the drink, and so she was the
She
one
was
that
like the
kind of like
villain half the time to me.
yeah, like he was like young love, innocent love with his Annabelle Lee, and then every now and then she would pop in and take him down this other path. Like, no, you need to be a fighter. No, you need to be by his side. And so like I question that. So I think he did start off with innocent love, innocent passion to be able to save, change the world, and then he kind of just drifted down the path of
Destruction.
destruction. Exactly. And then realize that, like, maybe he wants to right the wrong a little bit and just doesn't do it in the best way. Or realizes to the end that he can't. And yeah. Yeah, there's so much more I want to go more into. Yeah, I think he just gets lost along the way.
Yeah, you make a good point, because the path to hell always starts with good intentions. And I think you make a really good point about Madeline Usher too, played by Mary McDonnell. And she was kind of, there was a lot of old lore and mythos storytelling here with good and evil,
Mhm.
God and the devil and things like that. And when I was trying to say who is who and piece together, all these little breadcrumbs that Mike Flanagan left for us, there was time and time again, I felt like, is Madeline kind of the devil whispering into her brother's ear, sending him down this path of destruction? And perhaps, I don't know. That's yes, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like Bruce Greenwood, just on a level of artistic integrity, like him as an actor playing this role, thought he knocked it out of the park.
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought he was so excellent. I also thought all the younger versions were really good. So played by Zach Gilford, Graham for Chair. And then of course again Bruce Greenwood playing the older version. And we would have, I'm not sure how much you dug into the production side of the history of the show. We would have actually gotten a completely different actor and character because the original part went to Frank Langella.
Oh.
So he was originally cast to play Roderick Usher. So he would have actually, there's a thing about writing and characters, because just because a character is written a certain way, it's a certain way on the page. When we actually bring in an actor, they can completely become someone different. Like, the actors are so important in bringing these characters to life, and they usually put their own spin and flair on it. And now I couldn't even imagine anybody else but Bruce Greenwood
Exactly.
playing this guy.
As you said that, I'm like, I don't think I can have he can't be played by anybody else. Like, Bruce Greenwood was pretty much Roderick Usher, and now every time I see him, I'm gonna think of Roderick Usher. He
Exactly.
played that role so well.
And he had such a, so he was the patriarch. So as we go down the list of talking about the other characters and the plotting around them, I'm going to probably use him as the kind of the anchor, because he was the patriarch.
Yeah.
And so connected to him was the strangest relationship sometimes I felt in the show. And that was with wife Juno, a former addict that then became his wife. And like, when you're really trying to dig into the narrative and thematic devices of a plot like this, Juno was an embodiment of his creation. It wasn't, he didn't want a wife. He wanted this, human embodiment of what he made with Fortunato.
I mean, I think it goes back to him wanting to the world needs changing, and him going back to his positive, good intentions and going into this. Like, he started off with Ligadon being a non-addictive, air quotes, way
Huge air
to
quotes.
help mankind, help people, and went astray down the path. And as these allegations started to come against him, and he's being seen as casted as like a bad evil man, I think he latched on to Juno and it was like, no, but my work really does help people. I really am helping people. Like, I think he's trying to like either talk himself into thinking like, I'm not really this bad person that everybody's thinking I am. I actually am doing good. I'm helping people. Like, my pill has saved her life, and this is amazing. And so I think that's where I kind of see him latching on, like him wanting to go back to his initial passion of wanting to help people, especially help his mom, because it really goes back to helping his mom and having his mom go through all that pain. I think that's where it stems from. And so I just feel like Juno is just a representation of him trying to get back to his first passion, his initial passion before he went astray.
That's an interesting interpretation, because there's, for all of Roderick's quote unquote good sides, his intention, there we go, his intention to save, when he was finally confessing at the end, there was a moment when there's only, like, I think it's only a line or two of dialogue where he does confess. As much as he said that to the world and truly believed it, he equally knew deep down what he was doing too.
Yeah.
So there is a part of me that believes, and this is why he's such a great three-dimensional character, there is a part of me that thinks you're totally right. He was trying to do good in the beginning, and there was an intention to change the world for the better, but deep down he knew that his pursuit for this endless greed and power was probably only going to hurt the world more than better it.
I kind of knew earlier on how evil this person was, when he talked about the lemonade story.
Oh, I thought that was the best monologue in the whole GD show.
I
I
agree.
loved that. Okay, tell the good people real quick what it was and what it was trying to
I don't
say.
think I can even recap it, but, like, it's basically, going off of that, quote that everybody says, like, when the world hands you lemons, and normally, like, you make lemonade, but no, he went on to this whole tangent on, like, "No, you don't make lemonade. You basically, like, hog up all the lemons and basically have this big destructive plan to, like,
It was a
harm the
metaphor for
world."
capitalism,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
yes.
you don't just give the world lemonade when the world hands you lemons. You convince it that that it's scarce, and
Yeah.
now we need to rack up the price, and that you can't live without lemons, and that every new cool word on the planet is now lemon. Like he's talking about how capitalism changes culture for its bottom line. More money, more power, more greed.
That made me hit home because 'cause I'm like, "This is a horror movie. Why are we talking about this?" And it just kinda made me sit there and think like, "Yo, that's real."
Well, I think, and this is where it's elevated horror. The scary part for me is for the first time in a long time, I felt like one monologue, one piece of written material, in this case, a metaphor, really encapsulated how these crazy people think. I think they think that way.
I think people currently now in this world think like that. That's what made me very scary that, like, people now think like that. Like,
So you're saying not just CEOs, just like Joes and Janes that are trying to become influencers on TikTok, or like trying to be, they're so greedy and power hungry that they look at everything that way.
maybe not to the extreme as his monologue, but like, yeah, I do tend to think that the world has shifted into a way where we're trying to think of how can we either get more followers, get more money, get more
Sure.
power. I do think that even if it's on a smaller scale, yeah, I do think that we're sending our culture shifting into that direction.
But not us guys, but seriously, follow us and subscribe and do all the things. Well, it's funny because as much as we would love an audience, we're we joke about this all the time. It's like we don't care. It's gonna be the same show, Like if you guys don't follow, don't subscribe, it'll be the same show. We don't give a shit what you guys think. So let's switch gears to Madeline Usher, because yes, she is kind of the matriarch in some of the ways, and there was every once in a while I would feel that's kind of how they acted towards each other. I don't think that they're written to be that way, but I almost felt like they're husband and wife,
Mhm.
even though they were brother and sister.
I
And I
agree.
would have this. There was a weird tension. There wasn't sexual tension, but it was just like a dynamic.
Yeah.
And again, the older version was played by Mary McDonnell. The younger versions were played by Willa Fitzgerald, Lulu Wilson, and Kate Whittington, again during her adult and younger years respectively. And again, I felt like they knocked it out of the park. I felt like all the actors did. They did a really good job playing these roles. And she was, just like you said, she was menacing. Like she was more of a villain than Verna was to me sometimes. Where I was like, when she got into a room, she she took hold of that room, and and yeah, it was, and then she always had an angle, right? It was never to help someone or do anything. It was always, how can we win? How can we break every rule in the playbook? How can we cut corners? How can we cut out the middleman or the little guy and do every nefarious thing in the book to get to the top?
Yeah, I think she had so many different layers too. I think to me, it kind of
She had a lot
represent
of layers.
she
Oh yeah.
did. It kind of like, to me, she represented the
Because there
struggle
was a
of, like,
feminist
women.
side. Yeah, there was a feminist side to it
Yeah.
as well, where it's like, God, I'm just playing in this effing boys club all the time, and like I want to be the CEO too. Why can't I be it?
Yeah. Or like, I absolutely like her monologue towards the end on, episode 8, I thought was really, eye-opening too on certain things. Because 'cause I'm like, sometimes from a woman's perspective, I feel like that's the direction we're going to a little bit, where
Sure.
we wanna step back in time and just strip women's rights away, and like, yeah, and so I see that sometimes as female, especially in wanting to be in that type of industry, or in just wanting to, like, grow up in our career, we just have to be a little bit harder, a little bit cutthroat. Us females being cutthroat, we are looked as evil, as well as him being cutthroat. He's not looked as evil as much as his sister is. And so I do think that she kind of plays that line of like how women are supposed to, or how we feel like we need to be in a world just for us to be able to gain and climb the ladder. I mean, or even just being able to like grow our career and do what we want to do. We always feel like it's second to what she felt like the power of men. And so she never wanted to be controlled by men. And so I can relate to that too. And so that she it's so many different layers, because I feel like, yeah, some things that she says, I'm like, girl, I agree with you.
Absolutely. I think, well put, Miss C. See, she's crystal clear, guys. Well put. I couldn't have said it better myself. I agree on all accounts. The character's very three dimensional, and there is, there's still a sinister side. But aside, how should I put it? It's like I don't like her actions aren't always justified, but I can at least understand where she's coming from, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I think you make a really, really great point in the dichotomy of women in society, especially when it comes to careers in corporate worlds, when there's a dichotomy between what and when they want it versus how they have to act and be to get it.
Mhm.
I think is a very profound idea that you gave to us. So well put. That brings us to Frederick Usher, Roderick's eldest son, played by Henry Thomas. And there was a lot of, I want to say this as we get further and further down this rabbit hole and talk about characters in terms of the plotting, because there was a lot of instances where they tapped into fears that
Mhm.
I don't really see a lot in other shows. And this idea, especially when it comes to his wife, Morella,
Oh,
who in
yeah.
episode two was burned almost to death by
Mhm.
acid, but she was the only one that lived in the masquerade party. And it tapped into this fear of like being a prisoner in your own body. She was just stuck in this hospital bed, was alive and could kind of interact with the world. And then it tapped into the nightmare of caregiver abuse,
Mm.
and having this person who was Frederick Usher, her husband, essentially abusing her while she was just stuck, just a prisoner in her body. And it just still gives me some chills thinking, like, could you imagine being in that situation? That is so scary.
No, it is completely scary, and I didn't even think about it from that perspective, but yeah, like, like I said, he just touches on so many things that are culturally, like, happening in this world where, there is a thing where caregivers, I know right now, I have family, that happen to, be utilizing caregivers, and so you're always wanting them to ensure that they're, like, taking care of your loved ones, and so,
Yeah.
even if that caregiver is your loved one, you wanna make sure that they're taking care of their loved one. And so, yeah, to know that like a stranger and you less, but like a person that's supposed to love you unconditionally, your husband, your partner, is just basically like
Like a
torturing
monster
you. Yeah.
out of nowhere.
That was that was very uncomfortable, unsettling.
Taps into this primal fear a lot of us have.
Yeah.
And to cap off talking about Frederick Usher and the trinity of his family, so it's Frederick, Morella, and of course we couldn't end this piece without talking about Lenore, which is another one of the few characters that is really likable. You probably loved Lenore throughout their story because she was such, like, comparatively, she was just so pure and innocent and always strove to do the right thing. Seeing her die, even though it wasn't brutal or disgusting or gruesome, was still very sad and touching.
Every time I've seen it, because I saw,
I saw it
saw
3
saw
times,
the
oh
series
god.
multiple times. I keep crying on that part too, so
Do you
every time I
really?
see it, I
Oh,
cry.
man. Oh, and this is when I first, again, I'll be humble here. I'll be the first to admit I was not as versed with Poe tales. I've always liked
Mhm.
Edgar Allan Poe, and I've read the big ones, but I haven't read a lot of the deep cuts until I was preparing for the show. And that's the one name that always stuck out. That's probably the most famous name in any of Poe's stories, is Lenore
Yeah.
from The Raven, and sweet Lenore
Mhm.
and Nevermore. And yeah, I loved Lenore's character. I thought she was played really well, and very sympathetic. And unfortunately, because the deal was made, she had to die along with the other family members. But she was definitely a beacon of hope. And to hear that her mother eventually survived and created a foundation in her name and saved so many more lives than Ligadone could ever kill was very, very touching, I think, plot point to hit upon.
I think they had to do that. They kinda
We
had
had to have a little bit of a happy ending.
Oh, yeah, because I think if they would've took the sweet Lenora, like, I feel like she was the light, the angel, as opposed to if you were to say, like, devil and evil, like, devil and angels are, evil and good, like, she's definitely was the purity in that family. But I think they definitely had to give her a happy story, otherwise
Give her that
I will be unsettled.
happy ending arc. And who did not have a happy ending arc is, of course, Camille, one of Roderick's illegitimate children, played by Kate Siegel. Again, this is if you listened to our episode on the career of Mike Flanagan, this was his wife. This is his wife that he puts in all of his stuff, and she's an amazing actor. Even if
She's
it wasn't her,
amazing.
yeah, even if she wasn't his wife, I can see her playing these characters really well. And there are not a ton I want to say about this character. Let's talk about Napoleon Leo Usher, another one of Roderick's illegitimate children, played by Raoul Colley. And this one I will say taps into another fear of mine. So when it came to his demise,
Mhm.
he was a drug addict that would often black out, and he would wake up to something heinous that he did but couldn't remember. And I think anybody that has you know not necessarily been in the shoes of a drug addict. I definitely have never been there, but have been in a situation where you can't remember things very well, be it with alcohol or any more legal means, and definitely with blackouts, where that taps into a very, very personal fear of mine. Of I have always feared of, like, what's if I did something horrible, like completely out of character? That's not me, kind of thing. But did it while I was blacked out on something, and I couldn't remember, and I did this horrible, horrible, Sid and Nancy type of situation story, because I wasn't in control. I wasn't in control. I was blacked out, and I feel like his character doing that in these scenes and dealing with the black cat really, really brought it home for some fears that we don't really see in a lot of horror.
Yeah. Did you get to read The Black Cat, the short
I
story?
did not know.
Oh, so I read it after the fact, because this is another one that I just didn't, realize that Poe was written, and, it that episode is pretty much legit heavily aligned to the short story, and so there's a lot of pieces that just kinda like, okay, connected the dots, but, like, just kinda made it even more gory, so that I would say out of all the siblings, Leo probably to me was not the worst one, so I was kinda sad that he did.
Really?
I'm I what
I
yes, like, I
I
mean, what
not
he
the worst. I guess that's
compared to, like I yeah, what exactly made him super evil?
I mean, we when we first meet him, he was cheating on his partner with this
I mean
woman.
yeah,
Now,
I forgot about
I mean,
that.
that's pretty freaking evil.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, okay, I forgot about that part.
he would give his family drugs. He literally supplied the entire masquerade party with drugs.
He did not supply, he provided 2 dealers for it, and everything was on the deal 2 dealers.
Call it what you will, Casey, but he supplied them, didn't he? So by this is math. This is calculus 101. Mathematically, he supplied it.
I just feel like out of all the rest of the siblings, he was not as
I think he
evil.
was ass. I will give him
He
ass.
as okay, I
There was one, and we haven't got to him yet, and it is a him. There was one that I think is the worst. Like, I hated him more than any other ones, and we'll get to him in a minute. But before we do, let's talk about Tamerlane Usher, Roderick's eldest daughter, played by Samantha Sloyan. She is kind of bring it. Our sub thesis is, man, talk about three-dimensional characters. You keep making excellent points about how they're definitely not superficial and not 2D, and she's another
Mhm,
one, kind of, especially when we saw these scenes of her being a voyeur and
mhm,
hiring these prostitutes to play her.
mhm.
to get her kicks, kind of a thing. And I found it fascinating because I was like, what is this trying to tell us?
Yeah, so and I guess to me, this is part of me actually watching it multiple times, but, she the
Expert
mirror
in the house,
aspect
guys.
on it. I
Crystal clear.
I know. The mirror aspect on it. So I feel like she just wanted to be seen, right? And
Yeah,
so,
she wanted to be seen.
I think she has mirrors everywhere in the house, hence how she
How
dies.
she dies, yep.
And so it's more just like
Impaled by a mirror.
yeah, she just either wants to be seen, and I think that she doesn't, give her the love. She beats herself up, she doesn't give her love, she doesn't think she's worth it, and
Yeah,
so she hires out these people to play her because to her husband, she wants to be seen as this person that she doesn't feel like she can be able to be and
yeah.
do for him. And so I think she just doesn't know how to give love. She doesn't know how to give herself love. She doesn't know how to handle process emotions. None of them know how to process emotions. I think she just wants to be seen as this person. So she has to hire it out. And so to see her in this loving role is what really excites her and gets her excited.
Another well put interpretation analysis. Let's talk about Victorine, another one of Roderick's illegitimate children, played by Tania Miller. So this was like the heart surgeon character,
Mhm.
and this, of course, was a Telltale Heart.
Love
This
that
was,
too.
yeah, and this
That was
is
a fun
definitely
one.
one. I've read the big ones, The
Yeah.
Raven, Telltale Heart. Obviously now this one, and that's it's as soon as and what a god again, masterclass in adaptation writing.
Mhm.
And because of a pharmaceutical company, of course, that they're going to be doing tech with different kinds of not only literal pharmaceuticals, but different things in the healthcare system, in this case surgery, that we're trying to create an artificial heart, that that becomes the Telltale Heart's signature part of the story, where she is haunted by this beating heart. In this case, but we hear the the little prosthetic heart instead of an actual heart in the story, and I thought, my God, this is brilliant.
I thought it was brilliant too, and I thought it like I want to say maybe almost full circle because the original CEO Gus was before Roderick brought Ligadone as an option. They were moving into the medical device arena, and so with them shifting to medicine, I just felt like this was a circle back into that, realizing that like, hey, Gus had actually was talking about like medicine is not really what we want to go into. It's too costly. Medical devices is where like the bread and butter is basically. And so for them to go back into it, granted, I also think that the push was because Roderick was dying. And so he wanted to invest into this medical device to potentially extend his life.
Just like Madeline and the AI too. She wanted to live
Yeah. Yeah.
forever, so they wanted to get
That's
out of
been
the
her thing
deal.
for the
Both of them
beginning.
wanted to get out of the deal somehow, but they
Yes.
weren't.
Yeah, I think Madeline was doing the long play though, because she's been talking algorithms since like she was
She
in her
tried to kill
younger adult
Roderick with
state.
the drug he made.
Yeah, and
Like,
so, like,
OD on it.
I think she's been trying to get back to, like, going in that direction and taking over for the long time, and she was just doing the
Oh,
long
for
play.
sure. Absolutely. And that brings us to Prospero
Mhm.
Perry Usher,
Harry!
another one of Roderick's illegitimate children, played by Sapkata. This is the one. This is
I figured this
I
I
hated
figured.
this character more than any other character. But I will tell you this, Casey. I will tell
Mhm.
you this. The way he died, even though this doesn't tap into a real life fear of mine, I thought was the most gruesome. When they actually
Yeah.
showed the people melting, and
Mhm.
melting like as this big effing mess of body and flesh and bone and grit. I was like, oh my, I really like, and this is episode 2,
Yeah.
guys. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like it was one of those like, kind of like Red Wedding with Game of Thrones, where like after it's over, like the credits roll and you just kind of sit there and
I mean, the Mask of the Red Death, it was red. Oh, yeah, and that was one I read too, so once again, reading, some of the deep cuts of Edgar Allan Poe, but that one was pretty much on spot too with, Prospero.
Like, I don't, it's one of those things, like, I don't think that would happen to any of us in real life, but just, this is one that, yeah, definitely doesn't tap into most of our fears, but it was just gruesome. Just like just this idea of being melted to death from acid is such a terrible, terrible way to die. Before we get out of here, we got to tell the good people of all the stories that were literally from the fall of the House of Usher, like literally was the blueprint for the story was episode 8, when we saw Madeline killed and pseudo mummified by Roderick, and then she ends up still being alive, and then she kills him. The house collapses, and we conclude their story, and that is how the fall of the House of Usher actually ends. So that does parallel the original story very well. And what holds all these characters together, there is a what I call the glue, the connective tissue to all these characters, and that is 2 characters. And I know you're dying to get to Verna. Hold
Yes.
on. Before we do that, we got to get to Arthur Pym, the Pym Reaper, the family's attorney, played by the great Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. Okay, I'm not a I'm not a Star Wars
Oh
person, so
man, Buck is rolling around in his grave right
I
now.
know. I'm not, but I'm like, he looks so
Mark
familiar.
Hamill is Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy. If you didn't know, so for all the KCs out there, yes, that's of course he's famous from that role. But here he's the complete opposite. He is the Grim Reaper in a lot of ways, and how he
Oh, I
plays
need to
this
tie that
this
together.
this attorney. Yeah.
Mhm.
And again, another 3-dimensional character. And I think there's a lot we could say about Arthur Pym, but I think the greatest thing that really brought his character home for me was him rejecting
Yes!
Verna's
Oh,
final deal.
yes, yes, you read my mind, yep. I absolutely agree, like, he I guess you didn't even expect that, like, I was like, "Oh, he's gonna take the deal. He's just gonna, get off with it," but the fact that he didn't, and you see it play out too, and, like, especially at the end, you think, like, nothing's gonna happen of it, but they actually play out that him not taking the deal and him going to jail, and he's gonna be the only one that's really charged. I thought that was yeah, it took me by surprise. I did not expect that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you've all been waiting for, and definitely Crystal.
Verna!
Let's talk Verna, the ultimate glue of the series, the character that was in and out of every single character's lives and eventually their deaths. And I'm just gonna give you know what? I'm not gonna give more of an intro there. I'm gonna give you the floor. What did you think of Verna, who she was, what she stood for?
Okay, so many things. Okay, I'm gonna bullet it
So
out.
many, yeah, bullet it out.
Okay,
Because I
so
have some questions for you too that I
oh,
think
perfect. Okay.
may
So
throw some curveballs.
So Verna, I think she represented death, right? I think she was the one that just kind of represented death in the way, and especially when you start to see her like Google throughout history and kind of being that deal breaker, where you see these powerful people with her, and it's just more of like she granted them this power, but there's obviously they didn't sell their soul because she's like, there's no such thing as that, but find other ways to be able to seal the deal. So I kind of saw her as like the death.
She was like the embodiment of death to you, the
Yes, like
concept
the
of death,
embodiment of it. Yeah.
but like as a character in a plot.
Yeah. Yeah, she wasn't what you think of death, like the Green Ripper when you see this guy with this a
Skull
pixie.
face and a
Yeah.
big scythe.
I
Yeah.
don't see that, but it's the bottom end. But the thing I loved about her is that she gave a choice in how the bloodline dies, because that was the deal, was that for Roderick and Madeline to get this lovely power, that basically his bloodline, their bloodline, would basically pay the deal, cease to exist when his time was ending or hers time was ending, either one of them. And so they but I think how they died and why each of those individuals died so gruesomely is because of
Mhm.
choice on themselves, because she always said, like, even for Perry, right, the young
Mhm.
one, she even asked him, she's like, you have time to stop this. And so definitely had time to like stop, not turn on the rain sprinklers and basically have this tragic death of, what was it, like 78, 67, 78 people, I'm probably making that number up, of people that that died in that
That sounds right.
party.
Who
Even
cares?
Camille.
Semantics.
Yeah, even Camilla, like, she pretty much was like, "You coulda died in your sleep, but no, you wanted to be here because you hate your sister so much, we don't even know why, and now you're gonna get, plumaged to death by this chimp." And so, I think that the fact that she was able to, like, give you this opportunity to, like, "D Are you sure you wanna go there? Like, you have an opportunity to do the right thing and, like, stop it and go a peaceful route," and they all chose not to do that. Except Lenora, she didn't really have a choice in it. I felt I ugh. that one broke my heart a little bit.
At
But
least
the
it
whole thing,
was quick and peaceful and didn't hurt. It was
yeah,
just
it
a
was, yeah.
touch on the forehead. She falls asleep.
Yeah, and which is what she pretty much said that others could have passed away from, but they all just kinda, like, went their own route. Even for, like, Frederick, she was like, "Frederick, I wasn't gonna even do anything for you. The coke basically was gonna take you out, but you had to pull your wife's teeth out." So, and I was like, "Oh, snap." So I love that the fact that she pretty much allowed them to choose their own death. It wasn't her being this evil person. It was them making those bad decisions and choosing a bad path on how they died. The cool thing about Verna that I love is the actress that played her.
Carla Gugino.
Yes, Carla Gugino. Thank you. She just did she did
What a
amazing.
what a playground for an actor, right?
Yes.
Because she got to do accents, she got to play she did dress up in so many different ways. I mean,
Yes.
this would be an actor's dream role, I think, and
Yes.
she nailed it. She
She
killed it.
did. Truly loved the character. I love how it evolved from when you first met her at the bar to
Yes.
where she has at the end. Even how she's like popped up in like Arthur Prim's life, and he was talking about his history. I still want to dive into his history a little bit. So now I got to go read Edgar Allan Poe's stories on him so I can get a little bit more
Hey,
about
it's
him.
spooky season, do it.
But
'Tis
yeah,
the
I
season.
she absolutely was my favorite character, hands down.
I'm gonna say this. That was an excellent interpretation. There are no right or wrong answers. It's just interpretation. It's just different. And I didn't struggle with this. I just went through quite a roller coaster in my head. At first, I thought she was some sort of apparition, some sort of spirit. But then, as soon as I realized, oh, we could take a picture of her. We could real people were seeing her. There was a mortal version of her, you know. And but then when I was seeing her, yeah, through those old pictures, her being somehow linked to some of the most powerful people and families across generations and history, and she always looked the same while others aged. I was like, okay, there is something supernatural here. And at first, I'm actually surprised you didn't go down this road. I feel like the most obvious thing to pin her down as is the devil, and that these characters are doing a deal with the devil. But here I have this is where I want to give you a curveball. And for everybody that thought she's the devil or the demon or something like that, and they're doing a deal with the devil, you're not wrong. You know, for the record, you're not wrong. Just an interpretation. But I do what Novo always does. Like I went a little further with my thought analysis here, and the more I started thinking about Verna, not only for the record too, we do need to talk about this, but for the purposes of the the archetype symbolism of Poe's work, she is the Raven. You know, even her name Verna is an anagram for Raven. So if you rearrange the letters in Verna, it spells Raven. So, for the purposes of symbolism in Poe's works, she is the concept of death in terms of the raven. But for the purposes of this reimagining of the story, I went a step further and I thought of her as a god. Not the God, not a Judeo Christian God or Yahweh or something like that, but just a God. So, not necessarily good or evil, but definitely a deity. And here is my evidence for that. Because just like you said, you actually made a couple of really good points to point to this idea of her not being a devil, demon, or even death, but just a god. Is that if she was truly the devil, I thought she wouldn't care about collateral damage, but just more souls to reap kind of thing. But why would the devil let like the wait staff leave in the masquerade ball, in the masquerade party? Why would she give mercy to Lenore, kill her gently and not gruesomely? So I thought of all of these things, and to your point, she always gave people the choice. She never would trick them. She never would whisper in their ear. She would let them make the decision for themselves, and then once the decision was made, then she would finish it to the end. And they would always mirror, like if they were bad people and they did bad things, yes, she would kill them very badly. But if they were good, either she would leave them alone or do something like she did to Lenore. It was very like a very merciful kind of killing. Um, and so to me, at the end of the day, she came more across like a god character from like a Greek and Roman mythology. So let's tie a bow on this bee and tell the good people why. Why for not only the obvious but also for the artistic integrity. Why fall in love with and deep dive The Fall of the House of Usher?
I feel like horror flicks, movies, TV shows, I think sometimes they get a bad rep. So I was talking to one of my coworkers on yesterday actually about it, and immediately they're like, "Oh no, I don't do that because I don't want to be scared. I don't." And I think they just automatically think that's supposed to be this gory, scary, and that's all it is. And so I feel like there's so much more to The Fall of the House of Usher than just gore, scares, jump thrills. And so I would say definitely watch it because there's some deep topics in there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of The White Lotus, where it's like surface, like you're trying to find this murder mystery, but like deep down they're talking about like some heavy topics that's currently going on in society right now that we need to think about, things that make us a little bit uncomfortable. So I feel like this is a way to make it a little bit more, I wouldn't say palatable, it's the right word, but it makes it a little bit more accessible for us to talk
Digestible?
about. Yeah. And so there's just topics that we tend to shy away from or we just don't want to think about that we need to like actually have a moment and think through it because it can either help us change the world, as they keep saying, like this world needs changing. And so we're heading into this path where like we need to take a moment, talk through this, think through this, and see if we can change the world into a more positive place. Because I definitely think that this series offers more than just the cheap thrills of a horror flick.
There you go, guys. From top to bottom, Mike Flanagan's The Fall of the House of Usher. We can't recommend it enough. I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to, of course, thank my guest, Miss Krystal Clear, for joining us today. Before we go, we got a little extra for you, a little icing on the cake, a little cherry on top with what we call the gem of the week. Before we talk gems, though, we're going to talk sponsors. Today's gems are brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is our go-to tool for remote podcast recordings. What's great is that you can record separate audio and video tracks, and it's all backed up on a secured cloud, so you never lose your hard work. Even better, it's easy to use, and there's nothing to download. So go to zen.ai or just go to zencastr.com and use promo code Art of the Beholder and get 30% off your first 3 months with the Pro account. Now back to the gems. Mine is short and sweet, so we can get out of here. It's 2 albums. One is by XX star Romy. Romy put out a solo LP called Midair. It is excellent, and a very experimental piece by band Mandy, Indiana. And that album is I've Seen a Way.
Before I started to hop on to the Fall of the House of the Usher, I was binge watching another TV series that's been on Netflix that's picked up, and that is Ugly Betty. And so that is my gem
Oh,
of the week.
wow.
One, because I never saw it when it came on. It just is a place where it's like, okay, I feel happy. I feel like there's like, there's positive, there's good in this world.
Guys, check it out, Ugly Betty. And if you like that, you can always check out some of our other stuff at novodayproductions.com. You can, of course, follow us at _Novo_day and days D and at Novoday Media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things. And if you'd like to sponsor our little love child or be on the show, you can reach out to us at novodaymedia@gmail.com. So until next time, guys, you know what to do. We'll see you in the next one. So be good to each other. And as always, good luck and Godspeed. We love you.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Created and hosted by Novo Day and the Novo Day Collective. Facebook.com/Novo Day Media, at Novo Day Media on Twitter and Instagram. Music by A Company. Facebook.com/ACOMusic123. ACO on Spotify. Logo design by Tom Justice, JESTUS, of thejusticecompany.com. And executively produced by Clayton Anderson. All rights reserved.